This video is part 3 of my Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild trailer and E3 gameplay review. If you missed part 2, you can click on this link, or if you're really behind and missed part 1, you can click on this link. You get it? Because they're links. They'll take you to the video. I'm so clever. If you choose to watch those videos and then come back, please come back. I get so lonely here. So before we get started on looking at the E3 gameplay of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, some new information has been released about some of the characters that we went over in the last video. So I wanted to quick go over that first. The Goron's name is Darkel, the now confirmed Rito is Rebel, and our little red Zora girl is Mipha. And that's it. See, I told you it'd be quick. So I've mentioned in these videos before that Aonuma really wanted to break the convention of what we're used to in Zelda games in this installment of The Legend of Zelda. And we see a lot of what he was talking about in what little video footage we do get from the E3 gameplays. And real quick, I want to say that I've only seen gameplay footage from E3 2016. I know that there have been other videos released about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild gameplay, but this was the safest way I could make sure that I wouldn't accidentally stumble upon spoilers or major giveaways of characters or plot points. So if I have questions here and there about the gameplay footage that we've seen from the 2016 E3 gameplay that has been rather confirmed, denied, or answered in other videos of gameplay, I am sorry, but I have not seen them. So with that said, let's get started with something very new and very different being added to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild: technology. That's right, the adventure, dungeon crawling, magic wielding, medieval style series we've come to know now has iPads. The Sheikah's Slate has Link's magic apps is his map, and multipass. The Slate gives Link access out of the Shrine of Resurrection and into other shrines. Now this is going to sound really stupid, but I actually don't like the way that the Sheikah's Slate or computer, whatever thing he is talking here, is, well, talking. I've seen it in past games where fantasy worlds have some kind of primitive technology or computer system, and whenever they say words like confirmed or authenticating, I actually really hate it. I don't really have a logical reason as to why, but there's something about whenever there are these medieval type adventure dungeon crawling games or the like, and they throw in modern words like confirming or authenticating or things like that, that just really throws me for a loop and just doesn't seem to fit with the game. It just really throws me off the atmosphere train and back into reality. Now, something that you're gonna hear me say a lot in this video is like in Skyrim or like in Assassin's Creed, because there are a lot of aspects in this game that remind me of either of those two games. One of them being the map, mainly with the use of markers and beacons that's being introduced in a Zelda game, and just the overall feel of the map just has that technology computer feel. Now, obviously, this is on purpose for both games, but it still comes back to the fact that this is not something that I would expect to see in a Zelda game. I get the feeling that a lot of aspects are going to be me just needing to get used to the concept of, technology in this game, because that is not something that has, I think, ever been introduced into a Zelda game before. So it's a little jarring. It's a little weird. It's freaking me out a little bit. Not really, but a little bit. Another thing that it can be used for is a sort of pair of binoculars, and it also will ID enemies to tell you how much health they have. So it's pretty much like the hero's charm in the Wind Waker, but you get it at the start of the game. Something else that the Sheikah Slate is used for that greatly affects what we are expecting in a Zelda game is the use of runes. There are shrines scattered throughout Hyrule, and each contains a different rune for your slate. These are kind of like the items you would get in a temple or a dungeon. Let's talk about some of the weapons in this game. I will say that I am liking the diversity of melee weapons in this Legend of Zelda game. From clubs to spears, even sticks, axes, and even a bigger variety of swords. Like in Skyrim, this will give players the chance to play the game depending on their style. Hard and heavy with the clubs and axes, quick and classy with the swords, or a little more distant with the spears. Or you can have some fun and just whack everyone with a tree branch. Totally up to you. It looks like this could even be something we could expect with even the clothes that Link wears. We saw briefly in one of the trailers that Link was wearing a heavy, full suit of armor. So it could be that you can choose your gameplay style with not only weapons, but clothes and armor as well. Going back to weapons, they did bring back something from Skyward Sword that I'm not really too fond of. Weapons and shields breaking after enough use. I get that it's an immersive tactic to make the game feel more realistic. Weapons break after a certain amount of use and aren't unbreakable. But it was a really annoying trait, amongst 101 other things, that Skyward Sword brought to the table. To constantly be grinding for money or not spending it all on more important things like arrows and potions, and pretty much needing to keep a reserve at all times to buy a new shield when the one that you had was undoubtedly going to break. I mean, sure, once you go far enough in the game, you could get the Hylian shield, which will never break, but first you have to go through the hero rush mode only after you've saved the Thunder Dragon. And honestly, I can't remember if I even bothered to do that. I don't think I did. A couple of changes were also made to a very common, well-known item in Zelda games: the bombs. First is that there are now two shapes of bombs: normal bombs and square bombs. The normal bombs have much more of a roll physic on them, and obviously the square ones are great for staying put and not bouncing or rolling away compared to normal bombs. Apparently it's a problem that past players have had in Zelda games with the bombs bouncing or rolling around all over the place, but it's not a problem I can say that I've had. I'm just too MLG, bro. They've also added a detonation feature to the bombs, so that they no longer go off after a certain amount of time. You now control when they go off, when they go boom. Which again, I can't ever say I had a moment where I thought, damn it! The bomb went off when I wasn't expecting to, even though it goes off at the exact same time, and that has never changed, and I should know that by now, but I wish I could decide when they blow up. Yeah, that never happened. Also, snowboarding! You can snowboard! Yeah! But it does degrade your shield, so highly realistic, you can't always have fun, yay! Back in part 1 of my look at the Breath of the Wild trailers and E3 gameplay, I mentioned how Breath of the Wild probably has the shortest intro we've seen in a recent Zelda game. And that's mainly because there isn't really an intro or tutorial in this game. You don't have to go through Korkiri Forest and learn how to use Z-target, how to talk to people, how to dodge, how to pull plants, and get a sword and shield before you're allowed to play the game. Or Ordon Village to learn how to ride your horse, tackle a goat for one other part in the entire game, fish, and learn how to use grass whistles before you can play the game. Sure, it has some pop-ups telling you what to do and how to do them, but for the most part it's a figure-it-out kind of approach. Which I like, but I don't like the way that they're doing it. I mean, for replay value, it's great, because you don't have to wade through 15 minutes of backstory, dialogue, and tedious tasks every single time you want to replay the game. But I'm not a fan of them showing your controls on the screen like this. It's similar to the jarring effect I have whenever in-game characters use words like, use A to do this, or use your control stick to do that. Immersion? Out the window. So how can they feed the controls to you without tutorials or large and obnoxious pop-ups? You do, like the Romans do. Or in this case, Assassin's Creed. One of them was set in Rome. I really liked how Assassin's Creed fed you the controls. Small pop-ups out of the way and with very brief explanations. That way you could get the mini tutorial that you would need for more complicated controls, but if you already knew how to play the game, really easy to ignore. In fact, Breath of the Wild does do this a little when they are showing you the controls for jumping, sprinting, and using the bombs. So why not just do this for the rest of the controls how-tos? I get if it's a first-time player that you want to make it obvious so that people don't complain, I don't know how to play the game, they never told me. But I think it's been an ongoing complaint by gamers that we're not stupid and we don't need in-your-face instructions to figure out how to play the game. Especially Legend of Zelda. The concept never changes. And speaking of controls, Link can jump! Mario finally influenced him enough that he figured out up. It's always been one of those things that Andrew and I have joked about when it comes to Link. How he can do all these amazing backflips and fancy jumps over bottomless chasms and even hop just a little bit to climb over a ledge, but jump on your own? Nope. Can't figure that out. We also see that the stamina gauge is back from Skyward Sword. Yay! I don't think I know anyone who liked the stamina gauge in Skyward Sword, but I will say that I'm liking it a little bit more in Breath of the Wild. To start off with, it's not as obnoxious and huge as Skyward Sword's. They've made it smaller and a lot more simple. Also, the concept of Link having a stamina limit is needed a lot more in this game compared to Skyward Sword because Link is doing other really amazing things like climbing! And I don't mean run your face into a wall until he hops a little bit to climb over a ledge climbing. I mean Knuckles the Echidna climb that like it ain't even there climbing. Well, kind of. See, this is where the stamina gauge limit is needed. If they didn't have this stamina limit, then there wouldn't be anything to discern you from using the easiest means to get around, or in this case over, obstacles to get to where you want to go. So you have to limit a player from doing this, and the stamina gauge limit makes the most sense. Like in Skyrim, the stamina bar made it so that you couldn't keep wailing on enemies with your heaviest attacks, shield bashes, or full-on sprinting across the map all the time. There are multiple needs for this. Sure, in Skyward Sword it keeps you from rolling non-stop, sprinting all over the place, and carrying large and heavy objects for too long, but it was more of a nuisance than a discrimination for people to overuse the mechanic of carrying heavy things and running and rolling too much. Oh no! They stopped it so that we can't roll everywhere in the entire map, because that was such a problem in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Nope, they're rolling all over the damn map. Gotta stop that stamina limit. Yep, nope, now they can only roll about 3-5 times max. Gotta get a handle on those rollers, you know. Talking about gauges, there are a couple of new ones that you might have noticed on the screens of early gameplay of Breath of the Wild. First, let's look at this little guy who's obviously a temperature gauge. Now this also goes back to something Andrew and I would joke about all the time in adventure RPG games, where you could go to the most frozen of tundras, take off all of your character's clothes, and they not be affected by it at all. But now Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild had decided to make the environment affect your gameplay. If you go to more northern parts of Hyrule, it will get colder and Link will need to keep warm or he will eventually die. And you can keep warm by a couple of different ways. Either by putting warmer clothes on the guy, eating certain foods that keep your body temperature up, because you know that's totally how eating hot peppers works, or by building a fire and snuggling up to it. Another gauge we see on the screen right next to the temperature gauge is some kind of a noise gauge, I think. Now, if you have not gathered from these videos so far, in which case my fault, this Legend of Zelda game really focuses on each player being able to play the game in their own style, or the experience being different from play to play or person to person. And I'm betting this noise gauge is another aspect of that. If you want to play a little bit more stealthily, then this gauge lets you know when you're making a lot of noise and can even give you a better sense of what the in-game characters can and cannot hear. But I feel that this is a little odd. Now, I don't know if there will be stealth-specific missions in this game, and I get having a game that appeals to all kinds of players. But what gamer goes into a Legend of Zelda game hoping for stealth missions and aspects? Probably none. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I know that this was definitely one of the longer videos of this 3-part of the look at Breath of the Wild and what we can expect. Did you want a part 4? I don't think so. But thank you if you did get all the way through this. I know it was a long video. Imagine how I feel talking about it and editing it. Anyway, so yes, as much as it sounds like I am seriously slamming this game, I am very excited for this new installation of The Legend of Zelda. I haven't really been pleased with any Legend of Zelda games since Twilight Princess, so I'm very excited for this one. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be really, really good, so I'm very excited for it. Anyway, so be sure to check in on Tuesdays when Andrew usually uploads, Fridays when Sarah usually uploads, and Sundays when we have gaming going on. Until next time, geek on.